To go out? Yeah. Yeah.
And you have 2 or 3 sprinkling on the top, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mohamed Altrad, an Ernst & Young World Entrepreneur of the Year 2015, to give brief remarks to launch this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am here to tell you a story. I can talk about business, which I will do, but very briefly. The problem is not really business. The problem is what we do with business. To start with, I am a French citizen, and I won this EY title on behalf of France. And my company was just a support for getting the World Entrepreneur title. I was born in this desert of Syria, and I am of a tribe which traveled across the desert. I don't know my age. I don't know my place exactly, because we move a lot in the desert. And I was born from Arab. My father, Arab, my mother, who was we don't know her age either, who was probably 11, 12 years old. And that gave birth to my brother. This brother stayed with the head of the tribe, who is my father, and he died by bad treatment. Then 1 year after, he raped again this young woman, let's say like this, and then that's how I came to life. That's why I'm here in front of you today. I didn't have the chance to go regularly to school. So I went from now and then to to school, which is a Quranic school in the desert. Then I make a long story short. I had the chance to go to get my baccalaureate in Syria, in the city of Raqqa. And you know where is Raqqa now, which is sadly a famous place, which is the capital of the Islamic State in Syria. Now, when I had a scholarship from the government of Syria, I came to France to learn French. And it was difficult. It was a huge gap in terms of culture, language, history, nothing. There is no bridge between this culture, which is mine, a Muslim culture, and this European culture. So I faced a lot of problems, and I'm saying that for you, for instance, to see the importance of culture, of being open to others. And this is a lesson for an entrepreneur to be open to other cultures. Then I started to work as an engineer because I had a PhD in computer science very quickly. And then I worked for a state companies in France. Very quickly, I tried to build my own company. The trouble I had, that I had no money to establish, to finance, to fund the company. So I bought a bankrupted company, which is a scaffolding company. So the scaffold is a poor product. And why I could buy this company, because nobody wanted to buy this company, so I bought it. This company was restructured, made the profit. The profit was used to buy a second company and another, till now. My group is the world leader in scaffolding. I diversified very quickly also the products of my company, and we tried to manufacture concrete mixers, wheelbarrows, and all these. And also Altrad, and that's my name, which is the name of the company, is a world leader in concrete mixers also. So that's my story. And then very quickly, now you try to think about what is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, in our law in France, a company is called a person moral, which is a moral person. And again, in the French law, which is my law, you and I are called a person physique. But in both cases, it's a person, whether it's a company or a person. As such, a company, it has to be respected because it has a culture, it has a history, it has a product, it has people. So my idea is that if a person like us, unfortunately, will disappear one day, pass away, a company, there is absolutely no reason for it to pass away. My idea is to create a structure for a company, for it to carry on forever, and to make life easy for the humanity. And that's why I did a lot of research on that, and I became a writer. I wrote 3 novels in France, published. One of them is now used by the French national education to be taught in schools in the age of from 13 to 20 roughly. Again, through this effort, through this writing, I tried to pass a message that we, people, human, we could help the humanity. And that's really my story. I would like to talk to you hours and hours. Unfortunately, this is not maybe the place to extend my speech, but I'm sure you got the message. As an example from what I did of the money generated by the Altrad group, which is $2 billion turnover a year, a very profitable group, 200 million EBITDA, which is exceptional, is to finance a human organization. Before I come from France yesterday, I landed around midnight. I was talking to a man who is a professor in Montpellier. That's the place in France where I live with my wife here. And this man told me that we have to be careful with people, with life. He is trying to convince me, I'm already convinced, that for people who are condemned because of cancer, we should create a place where we can help these people. One of the terrible things that a sick faces at the end of his life is that he loses esteem in himself. But how can we live without esteem to himself? And the idea is to help the sick in France or everywhere to recover this esteem, to recover this dignity. And this is really what I'm trying to do. And I'm helping something like 30 human organizations. Why I'm telling you this again and again, for you, entrepreneur, just help the humanity. We have a big portion of the humanity which is suffering. Women are raped. For instance, in Syria, my country, I don't know whether the country exists yet. Children badly treated, and I can tell you a lot. The list could be very long. And that's really my story. Finally, I'm committed to the society. The society, again, like a company. A company cannot exist isolated from the rest of the society. So I created a rugby professional team in Montpellier in France, which is one of the famous rugby clubs in the world, called Montpellier Hero Rugby. Why I created this? Because we have a school with 1,000 future players, I hope. And these players, most of them are in difficult situation. I'm trying. This is a drop of water in an ocean. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope this will give you some hope in the future, because without hope, without a future, without hope in the future, it's difficult to live. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Mohamed, for those incredible, inspirational words. And not only did he start with incredibly humble beginnings and build 2 world-class businesses, but he's also using his power and influence to better the world. So thank you very much for those inspirational words. So I am the moderator of the panel today. And to start out, I would like to make apologies for the original moderator. Adan Mohamed, who's the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Industrialization and Enterprise, was held up doing so much good business with so many entrepreneurs that he's unable to moderate the panel today. So as one of the panelists, I'm happy to practice my entrepreneurial skills at the last minute today and to moderate the panel. And my name is Shelley Broader. I'm CEO of Walmart Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Canada, sort of an unusual collection of countries. And the panel that we are holding today is titled David and Goliath. And the purpose of the panel today is say you can have an incredible service. You can have an exciting product. You can have a dynamic idea. And you can sell it to other small businesses. But in order for you to scale, in order for you to get bigger and to capitalize on your wonderful intellectual property, you've got to understand how to hook into big supply chains and to understand how to use your entrepreneurial skills and spirit and connect to powerful global corporations. So we have got a tremendous panel today of experts from around the world, some of whom sat in your chair and lived in your shoes and started their own businesses, and others who run major businesses who have interacted with many entrepreneurs just like you. So to start off today's event, I'll ask my panel to introduce themselves. Jay?
Hello, everybody. Jay Ireland with GE, General Electric, Africa. I'm based here in Nairobi, and our company is in power generation, aviation, locomotives, oil and gas equipment, and healthcare. And we're an infrastructure company, and we're in 25 countries here in sub-Saharan Africa, roughly about $3.5 billion of revenue. We've grown in the last 4 years from 800 employees to 2,300, and we've done a number of announcements this week and previously around building up skills, which we'll talk about going forward. But we see the African continent as a growth area from a standpoint of obviously the economic growth and then the infrastructure that's needed to support that. So we look forward to hopefully attracting entrepreneurs to be in our supply chain, which is what our discussion is today.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Hello, my name is Musonda. I'm the CEO and founder of Java Foods. First of all, I want to say I'm not connected to Java here in Kenya. We're actually a different company based in Lusaka, Zambia. I started the business, we're fairly young, started the business almost 2.5 years ago, and it was off the back of my actually previous employment. I used to work for one of the most famous entrepreneurs on the continent, Aliko Dangote, and he used to come to Zambia a lot and ask the question why we were not doing more around processing a lot of the wheat that we grow, or a lot of the other products. And then I had a come to Jesus moment and decided that maybe I could do this. And so I left my corporate law position and moved back to Zambia in 2012 to set up Java Foods. And we looked around in the market and saw a space in convenience foods for the youth market, looking at affordable pricing, but also using local products. So the great thing about Zambia is that we grow a lot of food. The not so great thing is that we don't process it. And so we had this idea around doing our first product, an instant noodle brand. And I can tell you a lot of people said, no one was going to eat it. Like, who eats that? We don't know this product, etc. We've been in operation for 2.5 years. Easy Noodles is now the leading instant noodle brand in Zambia. This year, we have now moved on. We're partnering with the government and some of the small-scale farmers to do a product called Easy Super Cereal, which focuses on nutrition, providing affordable cereals and porridges to our children and to our youth so that they're able to start their day on the right footing. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Kitili Mbathi, and I'm the Regional Chief Executive for East Africa for Standard Bank. Standard Bank is known in Kenya and in most of my countries as Stanbic. My region comprises Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, and Malawi. And in my travels with Stanbic, I've had the occasion to meet with entrepreneurs, try and understand some of their problems, and hopefully I can share some of the solutions that we've been able to come up with to help them do better in the business that they do.
Great, thank you. So you entrepreneurs and delegates today have so much on your plate, from building your team to finding financing to looking for that next sale. And as you scale, finding some continuous cadence in your business becomes incredibly important. And having a reliable supply chain can be the difference between landing a new piece of business or not. So Jay, I'll address this first question to you. Why is that sustainable supply chain so important in order for our entrepreneurs to scale their business?
Thanks. I approach it from a couple of different ways. There's two, when you think about supply chains. The number one thing, obviously, is to make it sustainable so it's consistent and you're always going to get good, whatever the product is that you're sourcing. But the more important thing is you think about Africa. it's absolutely imperative that you build a local presence as a company. And there's many investors or companies that come in here and invest, but they invest in sales offices, but not a broader footprint. And what we've been doing is doing that over the last 4 years. We've put about, we'll have invested about $500 to $600 million by the end of another couple more years from now around building up assembly facilities and then looking for supply chains and building out the supply chain locally. And it's absolutely critical, because if you think about what we sell, if we don't continue the economic growth in Africa, there's not going to be any need for infrastructure at all. So we need to continue to build. A rising tide lifts all boats. So that's really the goal for us as we looked at supply chain. So when we've been in Africa for over 100 years, we have a very good supply chain in South Africa, which is where we started. We're now building it in Nigeria and as well as here in Kenya now that we've established a facility here. And so we're in the process of doing that. So as you think about being an entrepreneur and getting into our supply chain, the key thing is obviously to have a product or a capability that we think that can be done locally. And then from that standpoint, we work with the companies from an aspect of qualifying them from a quality, financial, et cetera, capability. And then bring them in, make sure. The goal for us is not to develop a supply chain that supplies our facilities in Africa. It's a supply chain that's going to supply anywhere in GE globally. And there's no difference, and our requirements are the same for an African supplier as they are for an American or a European or a Chinese, because we make global products and we have global standards. And I think that's an aspect. So the key for an entrepreneurial focus is to really understand what you do, make sure you're at the highest quality that you can do, and then go forward from there and try to find, obviously, places where it might work. We're always on the hunt for local suppliers. There's a number of different avenues to get that done and get noticed, and I think it's absolutely critical. And I speak quite a bit at panels and try to advocate for Africa, trying to get people to invest more, companies like ours, et cetera. And our goal is to really drive that. It's not just to come over here and sell stuff. It's to come over here, put a footprint in, and then really build out around it. And when you need money, you go see Kitili.
That's right. Thank you, Jay. As Jay talked about, the key for him to developing that supply chain is finding the right partnerships in order to drive growth. So if I could ask you, Monica, if you could think of an example when that kind of perfect partnership happened to help you develop your business.
Sure. One thing we have to stress is that these partnerships are very important to big businesses like GE and even to small businesses. And I'll give you, if I'll give you a hint, retail growth in Southern Africa is conservatively growing at 15%, which means all our supermarket chains and our formal supermarkets are looking for more products and are looking for cheaper and convenient ways to bring it to the consumer. So they're looking at us, the local companies, to find products to actually fill their shelves. So my biggest issue actually, and we've had to really grow up quickly, is try to make sure that we are able to feed the demand. And they are growing, putting their stores in across countries. And so one of our biggest concerns is, are we able to get the raw material in the quantities, in the quality that we want? We're not trying to be farmers, but we're definitely trying to get farmers to grow first of all, the right crop, because I come from a country where maize is grown a lot and nothing else, and trying to get the farmers to actually see there's actually value in growing something else, because there's now an off-taker who is now Java Foods, and actually getting it into us, but processed in the way we want it. So that's one of the value chains we're working with, and we're working with other partners who actually coordinate farmers better than we would do, and that I think is an important value chain for us. A second one is on the formal supermarket side, and I think what we're seeing a lot of is that governments are playing their role in saying to the formal supermarkets that you can no longer bring in products from Europe or from South Africa, for instance. You have to actually buy a lot more local products. And so we're having a lot of discussions with our customers and saying, well, can Java Foods do something else? Or could you supply another country? And I think it's important because it helps us grow, it helps us plan as well, and we really welcome the growth in the retail sector in that way.
Great, thank you. So you certainly see entrepreneurs from a different side. You see them when they are ready to grow, when they are looking for capital. So when have you seen an example of the kind of partnership that we're talking about to enable growth?
Okay, I'll give you an example of the second largest Coca-Cola bottler in Kenya, based in northwestern Kenya in Kisumu. And the bottler came to us with a challenge. They had 25 of their largest distributors who were selling Coke or beverages on a cash basis. And the distributors were constrained by working capital because they couldn't turn over their money as quickly as they would like to. So in Kenya, we have the advent of M-Pesa, the phone payment system. And so the bottlers' distributors converted to payment by M-Pesa. So the kiosks and bars where they sold the sodas would pay them by M-Pesa. The trouble was the Coca-Cola bottler didn't see this money in their account for 48 hours due to reconciliation challenges. So what we did is we devised a system with a third-party software developer whereby each truck had a specific number, till number we call it, which is a payment identification code. And they would sell a case of Coke and get paid, and it would be, and receive confirmation on their phone right there. And then at the Coca-Cola bottler's accounts office, they would receive a confirmation as well. So at the end of the day, there was a direct reconciliation between the sales that had been made, the crates delivered, and therefore the ability of the distributor to replenish the supply and sell more. And this helped the distributors sell more of the product. So it was a win-win situation for the bottler and the distributor. Another angle to this was because there was a clear record of the cash flows that went into the distributors' accounts. We as a bank were able to provide them with financing, one for the improvement or the upgrade of their vehicles, and number two, working capital for them to be able to hold a larger stock so that they could increase the level of business. And that's where we found the partnerships working very well.
Thank you, Kitili. And as you can see, when it all flows together and fits like a puzzle, you can see how growth can become really exponential. But all of this growth needs to be backed by cash. So how do you finance, and where do you go, and how does that work with a voracious need without a tremendous balance sheet that entrepreneurs have? And so you've certainly walked in those shoes, Monica. Why don't you talk to us about how you find credible financing at a reasonable rate and make sure you're setting yourself up for success for the long term?
I think we're still looking, actually. So I love that. What's that? Credible and affordable rates, yeah. It's really an issue, particularly for SMEs and in sectors which are not very well understood by the formal banking system. And maybe you can tell us something different. But it's the truth of the matter is, in formal retail, you're seeing that you're being paid for products which were sold 60 days ago, you're being paid now. So then how do you then fund working capital? You know, how do you then manage to pay for your supply, or you pay for your employees? So we were really looking for banks who are now much more innovative around understanding the business or the sector that we're in order to perhaps discount invoicing at affordable rates. Because there's no point in you discounting your invoice if you're going to have to pay 30% on that. I mean, that's money you're losing. So for us, I mean, we've struggled very much, and even struggled, for instance, when we're dealing with small-scale farmers. It's not our core business, actually. We're not farmers. But you have a lot of requests like, if you want sorghum, please buy a seed. but you need this. So how then do I explain this to my banker that, okay, there's a portion of the money you're going to lend me is actually going to support some SME. And so actually what we've had to do is go to impact funds or people who understand sort of agricultural funding to understand that a portion of the funding actually has to go to support small-scale farmers in terms of training, how to manage the crop, in terms of actually getting an extension worker or funding an extension worker to check on them periodically to know that they're actually growing what you ask them to grow. And so it's a very interesting business, and you really do need financiers who understand the sector and understand supply chain, actually.
And occasionally retail partners that do as well.
Yes.
And so in the Walmart family here in Africa, in Massmart, we have a supplier development fund. And we also utilize the 1 Acre Foundation, and it's very much for what you talked about. It's helping our suppliers, and especially our small entrepreneurial and agricultural-based suppliers at that critical point in need, where they've got a story that's difficult to get on paper, and a story that requires other people in their own supply chain to be funded and to be successful. And so we've had a $16 million commitment to help small entrepreneurial, primarily agricultural businesses in sub-Saharan Africa at this point of financing. So it's also partnering with the end user. You heard Jay from GE say it's critical to find local partners. Walmart, through our Massmart business here, critical to find local partners. But there's also the official way to get financing, and we've got an expert at the end of our panel with the banking side of finance. So why don't you share that with us, Kitili?
Thank you. I would certainly agree with Margaret that traditionally banks have been asset-based lenders. They want to see a title deed before they provide financing, a focus on the cash flows, especially when you're looking at invoice discounting, is a challenge, but it is something that we need to develop. On the small-scale agricultural farmers, there's an innovative program which we've run, partnered with a company in Alliance One in Malawi, whereby they are a large corporate client of ours, and they are a tobacco buyer. And what they've done is they've provided the sort of inputs that Margaret was referring to: the seeds, the fertilizer, money for preparing land, and extension services. And they provide these to contracted farmers. And they enter into a contract with the farmers where they will buy the tobacco at a price to be agreed. And once they have provided the inputs and prepared the land, the money that they've used, they in effect discount it with the bank, or the bank provides them with a loan equivalent to the amount that they've used and creates a loan for each individual farmer. What Alliance One does is arrange for crop insurance for the crop, and if the price when the tobacco is harvested is higher than their fixed price or their minimum price, they will pay the auction price to the farmer. So upon harvest, the quality is assured, and the tobacco is sold either to Alliance One or at the auction. The farmer receives the proceeds, it goes into their loan account, the loan is repaid, and the farmer gets the balance of the amount. And we found that the quality of the tobacco and the prices, as a result, have been better for the farmer, and it's another win-win situation for all. There's also a partial risk share with the corporation because this is a very challenging segment of the market to finance.
Absolutely. But all of this hard work needs some help, and oftentimes it needs help from the governments in which we live, to have great trade practices and policies. And so what are the right kinds of trade practices and policies that we need in place in order to help business grow on the continent, and certainly to help our entrepreneurs succeed? And there are many ways in which we can influence and help the government establish the right kind of rules of law, policies, and practices for trade. And some of them are being implemented and done today. Jay and I are lucky enough to sit on the President's Advisory Council for Doing Business in Africa. And one of the goals of that council is to look at the agricultural trade. And what are the routes to market? And what are the barriers that are preventing scale? There are some unique attributes to the continent. And we need to make sure that we've got the right kind of partnerships that are happening between governments. There is such a uniqueness to the African continent. We have 16 landlocked countries, more than any other continent. So even though we may have spectacular resources like right here in Kenya, abundant sunshine, great water, fertile soil, a labor to grow, we have product that can die on the vine or die at port. And finding the right way to work with your government, to find the right way to enforce regional action like we've seen in East Africa, and find the right way to work collectively as a group in order to facilitate trade. It's an absolute imperative because just as we open one door, sometimes another door can be closed. So as excited as we are about the new trade regulations with North America and Africa, especially around textiles and apparel, barriers still exist that we need help in solving. And I'll give you just a couple little examples. So we are not necessarily competitive. So even though imported fabric into the US now has been tariff-free and doing all kinds of exciting things to help boost our growth, the fact is the time it takes to transport that product, to get those clothing manufactured, still has such a long lead time that major corporations can't sign on with the fabric manufacturers. Where we can get product 2 days to factory and in stores in 4 to 5 weeks at Walmart, where it takes us in sometimes months in order to get the factories, even the fabric that we can procure from Kenya. So as exciting as new legislation is, we must find ways to be competitive. So the Port of Durban, we do a lot of transportation between countries. So the Port of Durban to the Port of Lagos can vary, not take, but vary 139 days for Massmart. So we talked about the importance of a sustainable supply chain. I'm not saying we have to have the fastest supply chain, but we have to have a consistent supply chain. And so certainly helping to talk to government officials about the automation of ports, about the automation of border transfer, and allowing product to flow freely through our ports, that takes away the opportunity for delay and takes away the opportunity for impropriety, is certainly one way that we can all help facilitate better trade moving forward. And so moving on to that, we've talked about needing money. We've talked about the importance of supply chain. We've talked about what kind of trade policies we need to put in place to make sure that we facilitate the growth for everyone. But it all relies on good, hard work and strong people who are trained and developed in a way that will allow you to grow your business. Jay, you've been working on the continent a long time. Can you talk to us about how you have trained and developed talent in order to grow your business?
Sure. The critical skills gap has been talked about quite a bit, and I think it's an understanding of really the capacity building that's required. And when you look at a company like ours, and especially in our supply chain, we're really looking for technical people, engineers, technicians, manufacturing capability, et cetera. And when we look at Africa in general, we fundamentally find a lack of quantity of these kind of skills, the STEM skills. And this to us is a key thing, because a country like Kenya has got great graduates in business and, people we hire from marketing, legal, et cetera. But they graduate 4,000 engineers a year. It's not even close to being enough people to continue to fill the pipeline. So we have to broaden out the base, if you will, so we can continue to bring people into the workforce with jobs that are available. And I think it's a twofold thing. One is an aspect for companies like ours to go in and provide opportunities and capability to do the training. So we're doing curriculum development with universities in some countries around engineering and technical training. We're doing scholarships, apprenticeships, internships, et cetera. We're also sponsoring training people to come here, train our people. We're sending people. I've joked a little bit. It'll be interesting. We've taken 20 Angolans as apprentices to Aberdeen, Scotland. So we're going to see how they handle the winter coming up there. And it's a 2-year program. It's a big investment by us. But that's 20. We're going to have, that's 20. So, but we need 250 in the facility that we're building. That'll be available in another 3 years. So we're doing it 3 years in advance, actually 4 years in advance when we started it. So that's the kind of investment that has to happen. But there also has to be an investment in back to the government, not necessarily trade policies, but they also have to start investing in more universities to handle the amount of population that wants to be educated and that wants to come in. When you look at sub-Saharan Africa, the under 25 workforce or under 25 population by 2030 will be the biggest in the world, and there won't be enough jobs for them. So that demographic dividend could be turned into a real demographic issue. And so we need to figure out, we need to create jobs, and we need to give them the capability to get educated to fill those jobs. So we don't want to keep bringing in people from outside the area. We want to bring people, we want to have local people here, and I think that's absolutely critical. So we've done a lot around skills-based training, in not just to serve us, but to serve our customers. We had 3 hospital. I went out to Kisumu area. We had 2 operating suites out there, principally for C-section deliveries, with 2 doctors, but they couldn't be used because no one knew how to anesthetize, use the anesthetist machine. So we invested in a nurse anesthetist training program. I have a hard time saying that, but
I have a hard time thinking about it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's really an issue. So now we're also moving to put training in for radiologists, for biomed techs, and for service engineers. So that's as critical as it is for your own employees.
That's great. Thank you, Jay. Monica, if you were to start all over again, your business from day one, knowing what, not would you, Jay, knowing what you know now about training and development and talent needs, what advice would you give our delegates today on training and development?
First of all, it's very important. I mean, Jay has said it, and I think that the issue is there is a deficit, but I think what it is that understanding what skills are required. And obviously it varies from country to country, from sector to sector, particularly from key sectors. And I think the best advice, I think, for starting from government is to really focus and see where the needs are, where your strengths are. So in some countries, it would be around oil and gas, for instance. In other countries, it will be around agriculture, and then understanding how do you skill there, because the needs are tremendous, and we are skilling. They are, we're churning kids out of the education system, but we're not skilling right, and that's what we have seen. And so we're all learning, and actually we're learning with our partners, for instance, in the food sector with our supermarkets, etc., about standards, simple things which we are not up to date on, but we're seeing from other countries and learning from our partners about the creation of standards and what standards we need, not just for our own country, but for the region.
It's great, thank you. And we certainly see talent needs at all levels, and we heard some great announcements today about bringing in some top talent and sharing and teaching and training. But there are also programs, to your point, Monica, that start at all levels. And so we were happy to announce yesterday through the Walmart Foundation and a partnership with a great local foundation, Homeboys, and OIC International, a training program called EARN, which is really about empowering Africa for retail. And when you think about the service industry, which we've talked about, it's the fastest growing sector in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's all levels of skill training that are needed. We went to a graduation ceremony yesterday where 40 graduates graduated from the program with a certificate that says they are service trained. And talking about all of the skill level, part of that service training was understanding the importance, not just the importance of customer service, but how to make eye contact, how to say hello, what's the appropriate greeting for customers as they come into your shop, your store, your hotel, your restaurant. How do you dress to be an ambassador of your brand? And what happens when there is a conflict? In some cultures, conflicts always escalate, and in some cultures, conflicts are always avoided. So when you're working in customer service, how do you deal with conflict to resolution? And we have had terrific success with this program and continue to. So it's finding the kind of partners and business partners that will help you to teach and train the skills that are appropriate for your business. It can be very exciting and an enormous challenge. So to close up with our last question before I turn it over to you, Kitili, as you sit in your chair and you are there with your suit and your tie, and you've got the entrepreneurs who are coming from farm, field, and garage to bring their products to you. And there is a huge variation of skill gap of who presents their needs to you for financing. And you've got the yes and no stamp on who gets the funding and who doesn't get the funding. If you were to advise our group today on one or two key skills that would make them more successful, them and their associates and colleagues more successful in their bid for financing in the banking sector, what two skills would those be?
Okay, I think the first thing is to understand that there's a big difference typically between entrepreneurs or the way entrepreneurs see things and the way bankers see things. Entrepreneurs are typically extremely optimistic.
Not just entrepreneurs.
I agree with that.
Because they are entrepreneurs because they see an opportunity. They see a big opportunity there. Bankers are financial people who will need to understand. They can see the dream, but they need to understand the financials that will take you to the achievement of the dream. So I think the first thing I would advise an entrepreneur is to ensure that you have the right records so that you can show in a formalized fashion how the business has performed. It would be very important to have a business plan which actually puts to paper the dream that the entrepreneur has. And the banker will look at this, try and put together an assessment of the performance and the business plan, which will enable them to determine whether or not this is bankable, and if it isn't bankable, be able to give you some advice on how you may need to adjust your plan in order to get to the bank. So make sure you have your records in a formalized fashion and a formal business plan.
Very helpful, thank you. And thank you to the panel. And at this point, we'd love to open it up for questions from the audience. And I think is there a microphone for them there? Great. Yes, I'm sorry. Right over
Good afternoon. I'm Karen from Malawi. I run a social enterprise that incubates other entrepreneurs. We identify them, take a look at their plans, train them, and make sure they're making an actual profit and they're making a social impact where they are. So we have entrepreneurs in manufacturing. So they get from the local farmers and they make an end product. They're making soaps, they're making mosquito repellents, they're making slightly processed food. So I'm looking at Walmart and Java Foods, hi. But my question is to Standard Bank, because you're a very big and very well-established bank in Malawi, and I'm looking at your Alliance One program, and tobacco is a very well-structured industry. You've got the houses, you've got the organizations that support it. Now, you have this program, it's working. Alliance One is supporting these farmers. They're able to get loans. What I wanted to know is, would you be able to consider duplication into other sectors? Let's say we organize a group of soya farmers to supply soya to Java Foods, and we wanted to give them that financing as we're providing the capacity building and making sure that they're getting what they need. What kind of collateral would you need? What would be your rates? Those are the things I'd want to understand.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to see someone here from Malawi. I think the key to a program like this working is to have a credible end buyer who guarantees a market for your product. And then to work with the end buyer to ensure that the farmer is provided with the inputs they need to be able to deliver a product that meets the quality that the buyer will require. And if you can put those two together, then it is something that we would like to talk to you about. Of course, the interest rates in Malawi are high. And there's very little we can do about that, but it is something that can be replicated in other areas.
Good afternoon. My name is Mam Dien. I am the founder and CEO of a company based in Senegal named BioEssence. We work on many different supply chains. But what I see is there are many standards to access the final market. And we as entrepreneurs, we are doing this, organizing big supply chains we started with 320 women now and youth, and now we are more than 4,000 in many different products such as baobab, moringa, everything. But, and this is for you, what I see is that every time it looks like we have to reinvent the way it works. There are no best practices from nobody who has succeeded. Every time you are in a new value chain, you have to do it again and again. So you were talking about education on this, and I think that the first education may come from those who did it in Africa, because Africa has its own specificities. That's the way to say it. Yeah. My second question is for you who distribute Walmart and GF. Let's say that you have a product that is ready, FDA, everything. You went to all these regulatory things. As an African entrepreneur, how do you do to get to the American market? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. First of all, it is very frustrating because we're asking the African nations to think about consolidating and to think about consolidating some practices so that it's easier to move product through the continent. At the same time, if you had a panel of 15 different retailers up here, along with Massmart, each one of us would have a special and unique way that we would like you to deliver that product to us. So on one hand, we're asking for standardization, but on the other hand, we all wanted our own unique, special way. I do think you make a very good point on finding a segment and a session, and I think we can think about that through the President's Advisory Council, of a way that successful entrepreneurs have bridged that gap and what steps they took. And you certainly are on the right track on following all the rule of law, on getting your product insured, on getting it FDA cleared, and making sure that the product is what it is in the container package. Those are all incredible and sort of baseline price of entry today. As far as getting your product into a major retailer, whether you're talking about our African entity or you're talking about continuing to provide product throughout the Walmart world in one of the 27 countries in which we operate. One of the aspects of the Supplier Development Fund that we run here in Africa is not only do we want to utilize your product in our businesses here, but we want to open a conduit for your product into other markets. We have some incredible success stories. A story about a wine company that's just fantastic and run by several sisters, and they founded this wine company and they brought it to our head office. We tasted the wine, we loved it, we put it in a few stores. A few of our colleagues came from the States, they wanted to try it, and now we've got products that were sourced here in Africa through the Supplier Development Fund in many countries in the Walmart world. And so utilizing the help that you can get from existing businesses, and I'll talk about my competitors as well. If you go to the website and you look at supplier development, to Jay's very, very first point, it is imperative that we work locally. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but it's also the only way that we can have a sustainable, affordable, and reliable product is to get it close at hand. And so in the case of Walmart specifically, on our website, we've got very detailed directions on how small entrepreneurial companies can interface with our company. And in some cases, we even have fairs where we invite entrepreneurs to come and show us their products. And we know that it's going to be bumpy, right? We know you're not going to come to us, with a well-oiled machine. But we want to help you grow and develop, not just because we're nice, wonderful people, but because it's good business. You're where the innovation lies. You're where the local feeling lies. You're where we can build talent and be relevant to the market, because no one is going to know this market better than the entrepreneurs who are here in it. So first pass is you're doing the right thing by getting your product licensed and insured. Second thing is utilize the help that some of the major retailers are willing to give you. And they're willing to give it to you because they need you. So it is a two-way street. We need you to be successful. So utilize the help and start on the website, and if not, go right to the home office and talk about it. He's next after you.
Good afternoon, good people. My name is David Namalenga from Namibia. I'm working for a company called Dinapama Manufacturing and Supplies. It's a quite interesting discussions, actually. I would want just to throw a question to all. We have mentioned of difficulties in the lead time in terms of delivering product to a country. I would want to be informed by all of us who are here today to say, when we talk about development in terms of Africa and SME development, we possibly also just, in most cases, move it far to say when you develop product to go somewhere else. I think the issue that we need assistance on is really developing good product and also developing a good relationship continentally that enable countries in Africa to trade continentally and regionally. I think that's the part that I just believe also the international community and any other associate organization in the world that would wish to assist to give a focus to that particular point of us. Well, further to that also, skill transfer, technology, and many others. Also to be, inculcated and developed here for the purpose of developing product for international trading before we are able to take it elsewhere in the world. Because charity starts home, actually. And I think that's really what we need to look at. The questions of the bank. Standard Bank, of course, is in Namibia, although you are not covering up to there. I was waiting to see whether you are indeed covering, and you said, you just stand somewhere here. Well, I'm going to speak to the bank in general and the banks in Africa, banks in Namibia. You find bank approving loans, disapproving loans, but you can also understand that the brilliant idea behind the story, that a man who cannot easily write a business plan, a man who can easily not do a cash flow projection, who have a very brilliant idea, who can do something much, much, much better than the one who put this on paper.
Let me try to formulate that into a question for you. And so the question is there training, is there help for exactly what you talked about, which is how can we help entrepreneurs monetize and professionalize their vision so that when they come to you, it's something that you can not just believe the dream, but see a little bit of the pro forma?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. And we have had a partnership in a number of countries, but I'll refer to one that I found successful in Uganda. In Uganda, there is an NGO called Enterprise Uganda, and it was set up to promote entrepreneurs. And we partnered with them to provide entrepreneurial training. And it's not training on the brilliant ideas. You're right, the entrepreneurs have the brilliant ideas. It is how to package these ideas into the sort of business plan I'm referring to and assist in actually putting together the business plans in a way that is required by the bank. We also worked with them on some of our customers to help our customers formalize their accounting systems so they could, really in a formal way understand their cash flow cycles, because a lot of times we found some of our clients were using the cash flow as profit. So just trying to formalize them, and we found it was a very, very appropriate program and one that we need to send to some of our other countries. And I will speak to my colleague in Namibia and tell him this is a need we have.
Thank you. I promise you're next. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Mike Chilewe Jr. I'm from Malawi. I bank with Standard Bank too, but we've got 40% interest rates, but we still survive. What I would like to ask from you, from Standard Bank, is I do commodity trading, agricultural commodity trading. We're going in manufacturing next year. But we've had instances where we've got a client outside Malawi who's willing to do a letter of credit, cash-backed, advising bank, very reputable bank, let's say Citibank. But you have many instances where you're promised this is going to work. You're getting the commodity from a big commodity trader who can get that market, but because you check on the internet, you get a market. But many instances you're told, okay, the LC can be used as a security because it's cash-backed. You do all the processes, the client raises the LC, but at the end of the day, you get people just saying, all right, we can't do it now. So we always charge for things like those. So I don't know, what is it really, you banks, you really need to be telling us the truth that this is not going to work from the very first time that you're trying to do it, because we're entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, we don't have security, but we try to structure deals like the LCs. So I think if you can talk to your colleagues or Standard Bank group, I still want to stay with Standard Bank because some of the other banks have stolen our ideas before, where you go with a product, you go with a market, they don't finance you, they find friends to supply to that customer of yours. So
let's formulate that into a question.
Thank you.
Okay. So, what are you doing? You're not helping this guy out.
Thank you for that information. And I would like, I'm pleased to hear that at least there's a level of trust in the integrity of our bank, because it is very important. I think what happens is you'll have very enthusiastic relationship managers who will tell you, yes, we can do everything, before they've checked with their credit people. And that's not the way that we should do things. So we do need to be honest with you. If it's an idea, we need to tell you that there's a process that we need to go through to get the approval. But more than that, even if we aren't able to do it at face value, we ought to be able to sit with you and see how this might be bankable, especially with the sort of LC that you're talking about from the purchaser side. But after this, maybe we can have a chat and take it further. Thanks.
Great.
My name is Daniel Gaza. I'm from Diventus Technologies, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We produce energy technology components and systems, mainly for smart grid, smart meters, and variable speed generators. My question is focused mainly to the two, Jay and yourself, focused on supply chain management. Well, if I have the GE and Walmart buying power, it would be very, very easy. We have small entrepreneurs here, small companies that like to source a number of components locally. Unfortunately, with the type of company we have, the supply chain does not exist. So we are relying on international suppliers, and mainly China. And when you go to China, there's quite a number of issues. Quality is number one, payment terms are number two, logistics, et cetera, et cetera. And fortunately, our company has trained enough employees in Ethiopia with very good talent, very good workforce, highly ethical, and we've been blessed with that. But unfortunately, that cost benefit we're getting from the low-cost manufacturing and low-cost engineering and overhead is outpaced by the cost monitoring the Chinese suppliers or overseas suppliers. So we require, I myself was trained by GE, I used to be a GE employee. We require supplier quality audits and so on. When they look at us, who are you? We require ISO certification they give us. It could be a stamped, it could be anything. So two issues that we see is, number one, how do you manage the quality as a small company? Number two, the payment terms they're requiring is 100% upfront. I'm sure Walmart doesn't accept that, or GE. That seems to kind of put pressure on small companies to grow to a mass production company.
Sure, I'll address that. We also happen to be a big supplier to Walmart for light bulbs. I didn't know if I brought wine to the meeting that it would be a better.
I would give him different terms.
You would, okay. Then we give us, okay. I think there's a couple of things. One is if you end up getting into, let's say, our supply chain, then you have the ability to kind of leverage our capabilities as well. That's one. Two is I think it's great that you're developing as much as you can locally. I mean, we're looking at doing something in Ethiopia, and we're very, we're investing there. So it's a real, and I know we're going to look at, we're putting in an engineering resource center, et cetera. So there's going to be a lot of, hopefully, more capability for you around some of that stuff. But I think, you know, the other thing I would look at trying to do from a small is band together. Are there other guys you can do to put a buying group together that then you can go to the Chinese or whatever, and you know, you have a little more volume, you have a little more heft. You all have to agree to the same kind of terms and quality and stuff like that. But that's one way as a small company to try to at least leverage into a bigger one. So I would say, you know, one is, you know, pull together, and it may be brought not just in Ethiopia, but it may be like people like, you know, like companies like yours in Kenya or East Africa, or, you know, use the regional approach. And then, of course, you know, try to come in and get into our supply chain or in other companies, preferably not Siemens. You know, and then, you know, use our leverage as well, because we want to have the great quality as well.
And my only comment is I appreciate your focus on quality if that's the niche that your company's after. And so people talk about quality and they talk about price. And there are times in an entrepreneur's life cycle where you feel like you've got to make that decision, right? You can make a lower quality product at a lower price, but it's the longevity of your business. And so I think taking these steps today, focusing on quality. Jay had a great idea of a buying consortium. Those are becoming more and more prevalent. And we talk about the power of technology. It would have been very difficult for you to find somebody who needs what you need 5 years ago. Today, with a couple of Google searches and a LinkedIn, you're going to be able to find people who need what you need, and you can leverage scale and power together. And we see that even at the size and scale of Walmart, that there are buying consortiums that we still belong to leverage scale in commodities that we don't need very much of. And so that is an excellent suggestion, and I think one that when you're an entrepreneur, you want to control every aspect of your business, and it's hard to partner, but there are times where that partnership could be the scale you need to escalate your growth.
Hi, my name is Donna Brzezinski. I'm a physician from the United States. I also have a startup company that develops medical devices for newborns in low resource areas. And if I could, I'd like to take a little bit of a deeper dive into an anecdote that started off the session about creating an OR suite to help with C-sections, and then finding out after the fact that you couldn't begin using that suite because there was a key element of capacity that was lacking. And I'm kind of fascinated with that, because having been in healthcare for my entire career, I'm kind of dumbfounded that there wasn't that level of 360 view of the project to actually know that that capacity needed to be there before you tried to think about implementing. So my question to everybody is, do you have examples of kind of looking at things from the 20,000-foot view and trying to implement something and then finding out after the fact that you're missing a key element? And if so, what lesson did you learn from that? And then finally, as entrepreneurs, we get very granular about our projects, and we vet all of our potential pitfalls very carefully. And for people we would partner with, like yourselves, that is an expectation before we can even do business with you. So I'd like to hear what your best practices are around that, and perhaps how you view your relationship with entrepreneurs in maybe adding to that capacity in your own relations. Thank you.
Sure. That anecdote, quite frankly, was, you know, we put the OR suite in. It was our foundation that did it, and we had the nurses at the time we put it in. The problem in Kenya is that they can't keep them. They get basically taken for much higher pay to the Mideast, to the UK, et cetera. So it's number one, and believe it or not, a couple of our big customers, Kenya Airways, Ethiopian Airlines, has the same problem, keeping pilots that they train that are very good pilots. And then, you know, the big guys from outside come and swoop in and pay them a lot more money, and they end up leaving. So that's the issue. So the key is, you know, there's the diaspora in healthcare, whether it's nurses or doctors, is absolutely huge. African diaspora. You know, there's more Ghanaian doctors in New York than there are in Ghana. There's 26,000 Nigerian doctors in the United States. I mean, you know, it's unbelievable the amount of talent in Ethiopia. I can't tell you how many Ethiopian doctors have come to us to see if there's ways we can, you know, get them back in with some kind of diagnostic imaging capability or services. So we need to figure out, and it's a combination depending on in health, public health or private health. You know, we need to pay the people more. We need to elevate the capability and make sure that we can keep them in country. And it's a big deal because we do train quite a bit. So the sustainability of this training program is going to be, we're funding it for the first 3 years, and then hopefully the government will take it over and have that as well. So you'll have a broader platform and hopefully a much more people to draw from. And we do that in other countries. So it's a combination of, now to your other point quickly on, I do believe there is, you know, the granularity is a big deal from a standpoint of making sure that you've thought through everything. And I think one of the things that, at least in a big company, and I think it might be true in the small company too, is you don't want paralysis by analysis. You know, sometimes you just gotta step forward and take that leap. And I think that's something that you want to make sure that you take into account. We've made plenty of mistakes. I can give you a few anecdotes that would be very surprising of products that we missed. But, you know, it's one of those things that you don't think of some of the small things, and sometimes you miss the big things. So it's a combination of both.
Sure. From an entrepreneurial view, yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes, and I can give you a very good example of when I started the noodle brand. I engaged my biggest customer, and the first thing they said is that, you know, you don't have any flavors, or you have very few flavors, that, you know, you need to give the customer much more. And we then went into panic and started spending money on R&D. But actually, we should have stepped back and actually perhaps said to the supermarket, said, actually, the market is very different here. I mean, he was obviously looking at it from a very different view, but we spent money because we reacted without actually having, you know, looked at the market. But actually, Jay is right. I mean, I knew nothing about retail 3 years ago. I was a lawyer, but what I did, I spent 6 months trying to do a business plan, and then my mentor said to me that you're overthinking this, Monica. Everything you're going to put in the business plan, the market will prove you wrong. And he was right. We actually learned by doing. We learned that the market was actually fairly simple. They just wanted the product on the shelf, which was safe. It was there. It was affordable, and with things that they knew. So sometimes, you know, cheese-flavored noodles actually won't sell in Southern Africa, or pizza flavor. They just want beef and chicken. And actually, that's the market we knew, but we kind of panicked and began to overanalyze when we actually should have just looked at the market, what was right in front of us. So we learned the expensive way, but we definitely are continuing to learn. And I think forums such as these, where you're able to engage big corporates, and all of us, actually, even other entrepreneurs, are very important because of that. It means that we're not crazy, and we're definitely going to, you know, learn by doing.
Yeah, there are so many examples of that, both within the Walmart world, but also just within the foundation world within the continent. Even if you look back at some of the great intentions, if you look back at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and some of their early efforts on AIDS, was immediately finding ways to get medicine and drugs. And what they found is that what they really needed was airstrips. So they had the product, but they had no way to deliver it. And so it's looking at that picture incredibly holistically. We wanted to provide the safest work environment for our associates. And so we put in place this great fire prevention program in which each store had to be certified that they were fire safe from their local fire entity, and the stores would be, you know, recorded and whether they had achieved this fire safety status. And many of our stores in Africa were failing this report, and we're like, geez, I can't believe they're not on this and they're not doing these things. And so I'm down in the market and I'm traveling to this store. There is no official entity in which to give them a fire certificate, right? So it's putting Western views on top of people that don't have that kind of sustainable system. And so there are rookie mistakes, but they are continuous mistakes, both happening from the entrepreneurial side and happening from the corporate side. And as Jay said, as big and sophisticated as GE is, he could probably tell you some things that'd curl your hair. And I can too. It's just the idea of meeting a market and meeting a supplier where they are, not where you expect them to be, but meeting them where they are and helping to adjust and help your plan at that. And so with that, I hate to cut us off, but it's been a great panel, and I very much appreciate the audience participation. And if we could show our panelists some appreciation for their efforts today. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, sure.
I think anyone on your team could take a picture of us.
Okay, oh, absolutely.
I will do what I did.